Morning. Morning, folks. Good morning. Here we go. Morning, Lenny. Morning, Mr. Milligan. Morning, Karen. Morning, Ian. Morning, Kirsten. Jim. Ian. Stephen. Hi, Eck. Robert. Sandra. Where are we at? We're climbing nicely. Morning, Nancy. Caroline. Sheila. Helen. John. Ryan. John again. Good morning, Lorraine. Long time since we've seen you. Right, that's 102 years on board. Let's get this broadcast underway. It's Indytruck Davy in the truck, coming to you today from Aberdeen, where it is 10 degrees and sun's trying to break through, but it's overcast at the moment. Okay, so that's your weather forecast for the Altons Industrial Estate in Aberdeen, AB12. If you want to know what the weather's like where you are, look at the bloody windy. Alright, morning, Colin. Right, I'm shaking things up a wee bit, folks, after my week off. I'm only picking 5 or 6 stories early weekend to talk about, and I'm not even going to bother telling you what days they come out on. We're just going to get right into it. So, early weekend, the big stories. UK energy strategy for future energy security is revealed. The idiots in Westminster opt for 8 nuclear plants, all to be in England and Wales. Energy Minister, Muppet, wants to maximise offshore wind and North Sea oil and gas. So isn't he running out after all, folks? It's amazing how quickly North Sea oil and gas reserves disappear the minute somebody mentions the word independence. But here we have the UK admitting that they're going to be dependent on Scotland's energy resources for their energy security going forward. Alright, now, the Scottish Government were not even consulted on UK forward-looking energy security projects. Not in the bloody slightest were they consulted. So, not great that the UK couldn't be arsed communicating with the people whose resources they're going to be stealing. Just not a good look. Anyway, Energy Minister, Energy and Transport Minister up here, Michael Matheson's going to have his nut. And rightly so. But the UK say they won't put any nuclear plants here in Scotland. Funny that, Saturday they said they will. And you can imagine that planning law is about to be stripped out of the Scottish Parliament in order for them to put their nuclear plants wherever they want to bloody well put them. Okay. Now, the Scottish Government are also no keen on the idea of increasing fossil fuel production in the North Sea. The Campbell oil field is to come online. There is no need for it. The new oil field that came online west of Shetland has got enough there to keep us going for 40 or 50 years. Never mind having to open up Campbell. And as I've explained many times, there's 41 new projects already online to come on stream in the next 5 years. Okay, so Scottish Government not happy. And no doubt that planning laws will be stripped for the Scottish Government so the UK can do whatever the hell they want with wind, onshore and off, oil and gas. Alright, and as we all know, last week it was reported that there's new energy superhighways to get on the east and the west coast to take the energy from Scotland to England. And I don't know if you know this, folks, but transmission charges are also changing. So it's going to cost the Scots even more to put this energy that we produce into the bloody grid. Right, moving on. Friday, Edinburgh City Council writes to the embassy, the Russian embassy in London, to tell them that the Russian consulate is no longer welcome in Edinburgh. Pack your bags and head off. Get lost, get out of Edinburgh. Alright. And Friday, the other story, the big one, as we all know, was Rishi Sunak. It went on all weekend. Alright, now Rishi Sunak was under attack for his wife having non-dom status. And it looks like Bojo's decided to spoke Sunak's wheel, because Sunak's seen as a favourite to replace Bojo, because Bojo's jacket's still in his sugary nail. Alright, well, this bloody Partygate, but it's been kicked under the carpet now. But it will come back to bloody well bite him in the bum. So, Sunak is he's under pressure because his wife's non-dom status. And as the weekend progresses, his wife agrees that she will pay all taxes due in her worldwide revenues in the UK, but she's keeping her non-dom status so that she doesn't have to pay UK inheritance tax. And no doubt the minute Sunak's out of office, they'll be away. The other thing that came to light over the weekend was that Rishi Sunak is a green card holder for the USA. In other words, he got permanent residency in the USA, which means that Rishi Sunak, the man who sets our bloody taxes, first tax priority is to pay his taxes in America. Wow. So the opposition parties in Westminster have asked Washington to look into Mr. Sunak's affairs and his tax status in America. Because if you've got a green card and you're a permanent resident in America, you're expected to pay your tax liabilities there first, rather than here in the UK, where he is the guy that sets taxes. And he's just put a bloody whacking big hike on taxes by freezing the income tax rate at which you start paying income tax, and by upping national insurance by 1.25%, or a full 12% of what it already was. Alright, so Sunak's under a lot of pressure here, and it looks like Sunak's chances of being the next Prime Minister are gone. Because, as I say, Bojo seems to see him as a risk, and it would appear that Bojo's team that spiked him. Okay, now his affairs, he's also referred himself to Lord Gates, Bojo's standards in public life, Muppet, to have his financial affairs looked into by Lord Gates and be rubber stamped and given the all clear. Right, but Sunak and Bojo are at loggerheads anyway. They're not getting on. Bojo wants more done about the cost of living crisis, and of course Bojo wants more money for his levelling up fund, whatever the hell levelling up means. But anyway, Sunak's no playing because he's holding the purse strings, so it looks as if Bojo might be going to shuffle Sunak out the door. Right, so moving on, what's the other stories of the weekend I thought was interesting? Well, Saturday I got a wee bit distressed. I was sat in the afternoon, I had a couple of beers. I was getting a wee bit distressed at how the campaign for the local elections is going. It would appear that Labour Party, the Alpha Party and the Lib Dems are all putting cost of living crisis front and centre, when there's absolutely nothing they can do about it, because neither the Labour Party, the Lib Dems or the Alpha Party are in government either here in Scotland or in England. These are local elections. It should be about local issues. Who runs the bloody schools? Who runs the nurseries? Who fills the potholes? Who empties your bins? Who runs social services? Who runs care in the community? That's what these local elections are about. And to have the Alpha Party, the Labour Party and the Lib Dems try to mislead us into thinking that they can do something about the cost of living crisis with these local elections, that's a lot of crap. There's only two parties in Scotland that can do anything about mitigating the worst of what's going on in the cost of living crisis, and that's the SNP and Greens, because they're in bloody government. So if the Alpha Party, the Labour Party and the Lib Dems are trying to tell you, vote for us in these council elections, we'll sort these things out, it's bollocks. Now, the Tory Party are being more contemptuous, of course. The Tory Party are trying to bribe the electorate. It's one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen in my life. You know, Dross is telling the public, vote for us, that way you'll get more money into your councils for Westminster, bypassing the devolution settlement, which breaches the 1998 devolution settlement. That's why we have COSLA set up in 1999. The whole local authorities and their finances was devolved completely to Westminster, to Holyrood, and it's written into the 1998 devolution settlement that would be the case. But it would appear that Dross and his Tories are trying to convince the public that if we vote for Tory councillors and end up with Tory councils, then they'll get money directed, they'll get more money coming direct from Westminster as well as what they get from Holyrood. So it would appear that Tories are trying to buy the votes. I don't even think that's legal, to be honest with you. Right, What else did we have? Another big story over the weekend. Food security. Food security is becoming really, really important here. Now, the National Union of Farmers reports that the amount of crops being planted will be down by at least 20%. So there'll be less food coming into the food supply chain. This has to do with increasing costs on things like energy and, of course, fertilisers and raw materials. And the reason why they're planting less crops has to do with Brexit and the labour market. Last year there was that much left rotting in the fields. They've decided just not to plant that much this time. They'll plant what they can pick, which means the British Retail Consortium and the British Meat Consortium and everybody's telling us that a wee bit further down the line there is going to be food shortages. The dairy industry is telling us that prices have to go up. The poultry industry is telling us that prices will need to go up. The meat processing industry is telling us prices will not need to go up, and this is down to production costs and lack of staff. Or something like we are something like 20,000 short in butchers to process meats. So everything's rocketing in price. So it is. And that'll all be passed on to the consumers. But what we're being told by the Farmers Union and by the Retail Consortium is a mixture of Brexit, higher costs, higher energy costs, and problems in the labour market means there's going to be less food on the shelves. There's going to be food shortages further down the line. And of course, Saturday we're back on 23-mile queues at Dover. This is being blamed extensively on P&O ferries. It's bollocks, kids. What's really happening down there at Dover is that the system for clearing customs, the new system that wasn't tested before going live in January, crashed. It didn't just crash, it super duper failed. It's no working. It's not even getting the engineer in here and put a patch on this shot. It's a rebuild it shot, because Bojo and his criminal cabal outsourced it to some of their pals, so it's pish, a bit like their track and trace. So, but the inhumanity of it, 23 mile long tailbacks and 25-hour delays to get onto ferries, where's the bloody facilities for the drivers? Who have been racked, packed and stacked? Now, the food industry are screaming for Operation Brock to be brought in, where a fast track lane is opened up to get fresh foods through first and let the general goods sit in the stack. But this isn't going to help. European countries are looking at it and saying, we're not sending nothing to the UK. Cost of living crisis is getting worse here, and as I said when I did my food security video a few years back, what will happen is the excess that used to come here will go into the European market, and cost of living in Europe will come down while things rocket here. And as we all know, the CBI, the Consortium of British Industry, they've turned around and says that companies are scaling back production because of increased costs for materials, increased costs for staff, increased costs for energy. So the economy is rapidly shrinking. Which brings us to a bit of good news over the weekend, actually. Apparently March was a bumper year for the service industry here in Scotland. But that's no surprise, because the banks are fleeing at London at a rapid rate of knots, and they're setting up shop in Glasgow. Wow. So, good news in Scotland, the service sector grew. Alright. So, we've got huge problems in the supply chain. Then we know for the worldwide figures, whereas the world's had a boom as the world's reopened up for COVID, and each country has had an average rise in exports of about 8%, whereas the UK has had a drop of 14% in exports because we don't have any proper trade deals with anybody anywhere on the bloody planet, and it's not getting any better anytime soon. So there we have it, folks. Food security is back on the table. The cost of living crisis is spiraling out of control. We've just had the Trussell Trust tell us that 25 million people or families used food banks last year. 25 million, that's more than a third of the UK population had to use a bloody food bank. And this is down to choices being made in Westminster. Didn't they have to have a cost of living crisis? They could have capped the energy bills the way France and Germany have. They could have threatened to nationalise the energy companies the way Italy has. They could have had a big turn-off and get prices kicked back to 2019 prices the way Spain did. The cost of living crisis is being created by policies being made in Westminster, like Brexit. It's mental. We are watching the economy being deconstructed before our very bloody eyes. And as we all know, if any of you have read what Dominic Cummings has to say and his ramblings, the idea is to rebuild the UK as a vast military-industrial complex. That's what your free ports are all about. Right then, let's move on. Moving on, and of course at the weekend, Bojo's hiding for the real problems here at home. And I know that might sound funny by saying he's fecked off to the Ukraine, but that's where he is. Ukraine's front and centre in everybody's mind, especially the press, because it keeps people away. It keeps them away from having to write about the fact that millions more are being pushed into poverty last Monday, and the same again the day. But we'll get to the day tomorrow because I do a review show. Okay, so Bojo flies out to meet President Zelensky over the weekend. New sanctions come into play with the EU banning coal imports and scaling back on the Russian gas. More Russian banks have also been sanctioned and kicked out the SWIFT banking system. All right. While in Ukraine, of course, while in Ukraine, Bojo announces that UK will supply Ukraine another 100 million quid's worth of military equipment in the form of armoured vehicles and land-to-sea defence missiles. Which is what they're being called, land-to-sea defence missiles. They can't call them aggressive weapons because if today Putin's quite likely to say, hey, you're interfering in this conflict, and all hell will break loose. So, but what's interesting about it is it's funny how that magic money tree seems to be able to work for arms for Ukraine, but it doesn't seem to be able to work to stop 25 million UK citizens from having to go to food banks. Funny how that magic money tree only works for when they want it to work. Let me tell you something here, folks. See all this national debt push? It's a lot of crap. 96% of it we owe to ourselves. It's just a number on a ledger. We could just write it off and just print more. It's a lot of bollocks. When you owe yourself money, it's not really debt. It's like Davy going down to the cash point machine and drawing 20 quid and putting an IOU on the cash point, on my bank account, if you like. You know, it's bollocks. I don't owe myself money. We don't owe. The national debt's not really that real. Yep, they do sell bonds on the market and things like that to bring in foreign currency reserves and things like that. But when you can print 400 billion in quantitative easing, 500 billion in quantitative easing to give out to big companies by the Bank of England during the pandemic, when you can print 400 billion to pay for the pandemic, then there isn't a national debt as such. We owe it to ourselves. Mental. Anyway, so it's also reported early weekend that they want to set up special special courts, if you like, to do Russian commanders who are caught in the field of atrocities. And it's to be made up by the international community. There has to be a motion passed in the United Nations to get this tribunal system up and running. It will consist of international judges and lawyers, and it will consist of Ukrainian judges and lawyers, because the Ukraine are no part of the International Criminal Court. Neither is Russia. Also, it's reported early weekend, and early weekend, that Russia have been suspended from the UN panel on human rights, as they have been blamed of atrocities. And of course there was a blowing up at the train station at the weekend there, where apparently 200 people died as they were trying to flee the east of Ukraine, where it is believed that Russia is about to mount a major offensive, where we get to the slicing and dicing, where he wants to take the Donbass region, the Luhansk region, and he's already got Crimea. And Davy, by the way, has to say, Davy puts his horns up and Davy goes to rang, because Davy said there'd be a peace treaty signed by now. But it would appear they're in this for the long haul. But let me make some things clear here again, folks. War isn't a nice thing. And a lot of these things that have been called war crimes and things like that, they're no. The bar that's being set for war crimes is really, really high. Like we talk about the butcher situation, where they found X amount of bodies. If people have got long enough memories, they'll remember just before the conflict, Zelensky was calling in civilians and tooling them up. Were these people really non-combatants? Because remember, Zelensky was tooling up the population, and they were parading up and down streets saying that they would take them on street by street. The civilian population would take them on street by street. Pictures of wee lasses with sniper rifles and that sitting in window ledges. So, because of the way the international war crimes are actually handled, right, the bar is set really, really, really high on what is a war crime. Really high on what's a war crime. And as I say, it might well come out in the wash when this is all over, that the fact that Zelensky tooled up the civilian population could well be that a lot of these things are being claimed to be war crimes on the actual war crimes because they weren't non-combatants, they were combatants. Right? So, as I say, it would appear, you know, I was wrong. There's no sign of peace treaty yet. Moscow's not secured the two other regions at once in the south to get a land bridge to the Crimea. Okie dokie. So they're the stories I wanted to talk about over the weekend, folks. Now the reason why it's no structured as it normally is because I took my friend Ruth Watson's advice. Now, Ruth used to be a BBC director in the BBC Asia service, and she was giving me some advice on how not to burn myself out in a broth. So I'm trying to make this a wee bit less formal and try and cut down the amount of subjects I speak about, okay? Right, so that's that part of the show over. Let's move on to this morning and what the papers have to say. Moving on to this morning, what the papers have to say. The Scotsman has Sunak asked for investigation into his own financial affairs, and that's him referring himself to Lord Keats. All right. The Telegraph has Sunak faces inquiry into his financial interests, but it's an inquiry that he has started himself. The other thing Sunak did is he's trying to find out who leaked this information about him and his wife. So he started an inquiry into the leak that get this information out there. Davy's memory's no bad, so generally when there's these leak inquiries, they never get to find out who's done it anyway, alright? The Eye has Sunak's hope of becoming PM evaporate. And the Times has French election in balance as after narrow Macron win. Oh, I meant to talk about that as the French elections on Sunday. I've got it written down here. Macron won the first round of the French elections with 27% of the vote, and in second place was the right-wing candidate Marie Le Pen on 23%. So there'll be the big debate next Friday, I think it is, in France, and then the following week there'll be a run-off between Macron and Le Pen, and it's really, really close. Maybe Le Pen could just well get over the line this time. I would hate to see France have a right-wing, an extreme right-winger like Le Pen get into power, but that's up to the French people. Okay. And the Herald has Russian generals may face UK sanctions for atrocities. If the Russian generals give a shite. Wow. The Metro has Queen my fight with COVID. Apparently the Queen was virtually opening up a new bit of a hospital somewhere down that road, and while on she was talking to some of the public and she was saying how she had a ghastly experience with COVID. Didn't have that ghastly experience with COVID. She's got an on-site medical team and she didn't peg it. Okie dokie. Right, the Queen reveals horrible, the Express has Queen reveals horrible virus left her exhausted. Leaves everybody exhausted, for Christ's sake. I think I'm so lucky she didn't get long COVID. The Mail goes with warning over use of over rise of drug drivers. Now, apparently a lot of people are getting stoned out their face while driving. Not a good idea, folks. Right, the National has blatant new Tory attack on Holyrood. Dross tells public vote Tory for more money from Westminster. And that's what we're talking about with Dross in the local election, trying to buy votes in the local election by telling people that if you vote for the Conservatives, then there'll be more money for your council forthcoming through Westminster, bypassing the devolution settlement. Unbelievable. I don't think it's legal. It can't be bloody legal. That's buying votes. That's gerrymandering the vote. I don't think it'll do Dross much good because the people here in Scotland won't actually believe him. But the mere fact that he's trying to do it, there's got to be something no right in that. And the Star has Putin's taking our fish. Now apparently Putin, Russian fishermen are getting access to Scots waters via Faroes licences issued from the Faroe Islands, and they want something done about it. That's between the Faroes and whoever it is they've licensed to fish in Scots or their waters. Okay, so that's what I've got for you this morning, folks. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found it informative and entertaining. As I say, I'm taking my friend Ruth's advice. I'm going to try and be a wee bit less, a wee bit more casual on it. So I'm not burning the candle at both ends, but I still want to be able to provide you with good information and factual information. So that was the big stories of the weekend. Sunak's arse is out the window, and it looks like Bojo's the one that spiked his wheel. Cost of living crisis is getting right out of hand, and food security and energy security are big subjects at the moment. Big subjects. But you've got to remember, the cost of living crisis is policy choices. We don't have to be where we are. You know, they could have capped electricity and gas prices, making the big providers take the hit. But no, because they've all got shares in these companies, because let's face it, when Maggie sold them all, half these Muppets families were all buying them up. So they're just letting rampant profiteering happen here. Food security, well, I've spoken about that many times, but it's really back in the highlights because of increased costs on farms and lack of labour, which is going to lead to shortages of food further down the line. And of course, we've got French elections and the war in Ukraine. The Scottish elections are now hotting up. The council elections are now hotting up. I don't quite understand why Labour, Lib Dems and the Alpha Party have chosen to make these things about the cost of living crisis, because, as I say, there's only two parties that can make a difference to the cost of living crisis and mitigate it here in Scotland, and that's the SNP and Greens, because they are in government, so they can claim to be able to help. But it's not related to councils, and I don't like the dishonesty in it. Councils are about who runs your schools, who runs your nurseries, who runs your social work department, who runs your social care, who fills your potholes, who empties your bins. You know the stuff. Read the manifestos, and whoever's giving you the best offer on those things, then vote. Now, my advice on these ones is, the SNP are saying just vote for our candidates if you're an SNP member, and don't rank anybody else. What Davy's going to say, which is no normal, because Davy normally toes the party line, but what Davy's going to tell you is, if there is a pro-independence candidate, rank them. Don't rank any British nationalist candidates, but if there's pro-independence candidates, then rank them. So if there's two SNP, a Green and an Alpa, standing in a ward, rank them. Rank them in whatever order you think is correct. But the more Brit Nats we get out of the councils, the better. The more Brit Nats we get out of our public life altogether, the better. So Davy's advice on the council elections is quite simple. Rank the pro-independence parties. All right? Whatever order you feel is the correct way to rank them in. Davy's an SNP party member. Davy will be ranking SNP 1 and 2. If there's a Green candidate, then Green will be 3. And if there's an Alpa candidate, then Alpa will get 4. And the Brit Nats will not get ranked at all. Simple as that. Now, if you don't understand how the voting system in this election works, you will get a list of candidates on a ballot paper. And the idea is that you rank them from 1 to however many is on that ballot paper. if you stop ranking them after the party you choose, the parties you choose, say the pro-independence parties, then the other party, the other candidates don't get what's called a transferable vote. Alright? Right, let's wind this thing up. When it comes to the question of Scottish independence, partisan politics in your pockets, eyes on the prize, and learn your how you gonies, because that's what we're going to be hit with. How you going to do borders, how you going to do banking, how you going to do international trade. And the answer is always the same. How do you do your spanners? We think we're fucking thick. We have got the most highly educated population in Europe. We'll just have a look round Europe and the rest of the world and see what's best practice and copy and bloody well paste it, because guess what? We're highly intelligent that way. Alright. Now, so when it comes to the question of Scottish independence, eyes on the prize, partisan politics in your pockets, and learn your how you gonies. Okie dokie. Now, what comes next? It's been a week since I did this. Oh, aye, support the independent media. Alright, support ITV on the Fire Stick, support Broadcasting Scotland, support Independence Live, support Indie Live Radio, support Caledon Media, support Druze Radio, support the iScot magazine and the national newspaper, support independence vloggers and bloggers. And if they have a crowdfunder on the go and you've got a few shekels to spare in your pocket, throw them in the tub. These people do great work. There's nobody going to have any shekels in their pockets when after the second energy hike hits in October. Oof, that's going to be a sore one. And you think we've got problems at the port of Dover? Well, now, wait till the biometric system comes in where every driver's got to get out and get his eyeball scanned and his fingerprint taken. Yeah, that's going to take a while. Okay. Right, and health messaging, kids. Now, Friday, 6,100 odd new cases. 2,250 people still in the cranking house. 35 deaths and 24 or 25 in the intensive care units, right? Pandemic's not going away, folks. Face masks in enclosed public spaces. Clean hands and surfaces regularly. When it comes to social distancing, use your napper. Have a look round about and say, how would it affect that old guy, that young old woman, that pregnant woman, that wee person out there in the wheelchair, if I was asymptomatic? Use your napper when it comes to social distancing. Okay. And testing. While the tests are still around, folks, please continue to test and to continue to submit your results to NHS Scotland, because it's important for being able to measure what's in the community. Now, according to the Office for National Statistics last week, 1 in 13 of us had the virus, or 7.5% of the population, apparently. Alright, now I want you to look after yourself. We'll be back tomorrow. It'll be a wee bit more structured tomorrow, but I'm still going to cut down the amount of subjects I speak about. I'll go a wee bit more in depth in the subjects I'm going to speak about, but I'm going to take my friend Ruth's advice. I mean, Ruth was a producer and director of the BBC for a long time. She knows what she's talking about. So I'm going to take her advice. So the show will be on. It might be a wee bit better formatted now, and I might get into more depth on subjects, but less subjects. Okay. Now, look after yourselves, folks. I want to thank you all for rejoining me today after my week off. Look after each other as usual. Eyes on the prize. Catch you all tomorrow.